So, when we were kids, we didn't have dreams. We had plans. We planned to become astronauts, rock stars, movie stars, entrepreneurs, scientists, authors, inventors. These were not plans. They were not dreams, I'm sorry. They were very concrete plans. But with time, the language started shifting. We started modifying the way we speak. We started saying, I may instead of I will. And someday instead of when I grow up. And then for many of us, at some point in time, we stopped even saying that, and we went straight to coulda, woulda, shoulda. And we've abandoned our plans. We've abandoned our dreams. Now, why does that happen? So, in preparation for this talk, what do you do when you don't know the answer to something? You ask. I asked people on Twitter what they think. And people got back to me with the typical answers. Some people said, you cannot afford it, or it doesn't fit your circumstances, or you just don't have it in you, maybe it was never meant to happen, you lack the motivation, you lack the skills. And I think that often these are valid reasons why we do that, why we forsake our dreams, our childhood plans. But I'd like to argue that more than often, there's actually a much simpler reason why we do that. We simply don't know how to go about it. Think about it. Any goal that is not immediately attainable requires a program to go through, a set of steps. You need to know what to do on a daily basis. Think of college education, for example. What you see here is the 4-year, 8-semester program for an undergraduate degree in electrical engineering at the College of New Jersey. Like any academic program, it's very structured. You know at any semester what the electives are, the mandatory courses, the dependencies between them, the prerequisites. But more importantly, once you're enrolled in a certain semester, you know at a daily level what are the steps you need to take so that at the end of 4 years you'll become an electrical engineer. You need to study for an exam or submit a paper. So the set of steps is very clear. You don't think about becoming an engineer every day during 4 years. You'll think about the paper you need to submit. A simpler example, we've all been there. Assembling home-assembled furniture. You know, you come back home from the store, there's a big box in your trunk, and you open it up, there's a pile of wooden pieces and nuts and bolts, and you need to put a bookcase together. Have you ever tried doing that without looking at the instruction sheet? So the best case scenario, I've tried it. You start off with a bookcase, you end up with a coffee table. But the interesting thing there is, many people around the world want to assemble the very same bookcases, and many people around the world want to graduate from the exact same college degrees. But when it comes to our childhood plans, our most intrinsic and inherent aspirations and dreams, there's no one size fits all. You've got to come up with a program yourself. And this is exactly what I'd like to talk to you about today. A structured process for deriving the set of steps necessary to pursue your dreams. It's a process that's based on positive psychology, motivation science, self-determination theory. But instead of boring you with the details of the science, what I'd like to do instead is share my own personal story with you and how I use this process in my personal life and how it turned my life around and made it much more meaningful. So here's my story, here it goes. 5 years ago, I was living in New York. I was the CEO of a technology company. And we were working with different partners like Deepak Chopra, Stephen Covey, scientists like Phil Zimbardo. And the task we had at hand was to mold or funnel all of the content from these papers and books into mobile applications. We were trying to create truly transformative mobile experiences. And of course, software by definition is very, very structured. So we had to mold it into the compartments or the sequence of the software. And as we were doing that, as we were dealing with that task, we had to test it as well. So we had to test that these apps work. And I was testing one of the apps that we were developing and releasing at the time, a positive psychology app. And in it there was a section for goal setting. The first thing the app asked me to do was to enter candidate goals. So candidate goals are kind of like brainstorming goals. There are things you may want to consider. You don't have to commit to them. It's just stuff to put on paper that you're thinking about pursuing at some point, maybe. And it asked me for a goal in health and fitness, and I put in lose weight. That goal is still there, abandoned. It's been 5 years. It asked me for a goal in my social life, and I put in for a block party by the end of the summer. Then it asked me for a goal in leisure and hobbies. And I paused for a second because I remembered that when I was a kid growing up in the suburbs of Tel Aviv, I've always fantasized about riding a big motorcycle in the back roads of America, you know, doing the Easy Rider thing, just without dying at the end. And I put that down. I put down ride a motorcycle from coast to coast. Now, mind you, hadn't even sat on a motorcycle before back then. But, you know, what the heck, I'm just testing the app, and I put it in. The next step was to evaluate these goals. And the evaluation is very simple. It's based on self-concordance theory. There are 6 yes-no questions that you answer. So it's 6 taps. Tap, 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 tap. And you have a score that represents how intrinsically meaningful this goal is to you. And then the app ranks these goals by order of meaning. So the most meaningful goals rank at the very top. And lo and behold, guess what ranked first on my list? The motorcycle ride. It made me think about how comfortable I was putting this thing on the shelf as a dream, and how anxious I am about possibly turning it back into a plan. But the app asked me if I wanted to commit to it, and as the developer of the app, I knew that 2 things are going to happen. The first thing is going to change its color and turn kind of blue, which, you know, I didn't mind that. And the second more meaningful thing was it would ask me for the first baby step. So I clicked and it prompted me for that, and I realized I have no clue. I don't know what is the first step to take, so I put that in. Find out what it entails, what needs to be done to get a motorcycle license. And then it made it into my calendar. And I started getting reminders every other day that I need to go to the dealership and ask. And I'm a responsible guy, but I kept snoozing it. And I've come to realize I'm snoozing it not just because I'm busy, but also because I'm anxious. Because as long as this goal, as long as this dream is on the shelf, that I'm safe. And I'm comfortable. It's a nice fantasy, but if I put it to test in the real world, even a tiny little bit, I could fail. So it took a few weeks. I ended up taking my son, who was 7 years old at the time, and we drove together 15 minutes to the dealership. I remember driving like that. And I actually took him because I pretended that the reason we walked in is that we wanted to see the motorcycles, he was just like, Daddy, why are we here? And I got in, I grabbed a brochure and basically ran out, and very proudly tapped my first baby step as done. And of course the app asked me what the second baby step would be. So I looked at the brochure and it said, study for the written test. Didn't really want to do that, but hey, I was just testing the app and kind of was very, very proud also about doing this first step. So eventually I did it. It took a number of weeks, passed the test, then went on to do the road test and sit on the motorcycle for the first time. And I spent a weekend up at Poughkeepsie, upstate New York, trying to do these figure eights. I don't know if you've seen people try to do that. It looks easy. I dropped the motorcycle twice. I injured myself slightly, and I failed the test. And then, as luck has it, they called me back 3 weeks later. They said you're eligible for a retest, and almost, you know, without wanting to do it, I went out and I did it. And this time passed by a notch. And at that point in time, was the proud owner of a motorcycle helmet, motorcycle gloves, motorcycle jacket, and I had a motorcycle license. So I bought a motorcycle. And I started riding with these people who became my close friends, and it was a dream come true in the very deepest meaning of that phrase. You could smell it, you could taste it, you can hear it in the roar of 18 big motorcycles riding in the back roads of New York. It was as real as it gets. And it made me think about what else could be possible. If this was possible in only a matter of a few months, what else can I do? And maybe, just maybe, I can do that cross-country ride, just like I was fantasizing about as a kid, playing with, you know, with toy motorcycles on my rug in my room. And my wife and I had one of these conversations, you know, and we decided that maybe it's possible, depending on timing. And a year later, on a bigger motorcycle, I went out. And I spent 5 weeks on the road, 6,000 miles. I rode about 5 to 6 hours every day in contemplation. And I also arranged to meet with many of these experts that I work with. And great insights surfaced from that experience, both from riding alone every day and both from speaking with them. But in fact, the biggest value didn't come out of these two sources. It came out of the people that I just randomly met on the road. Because if you stand, in some parking lot of a gas station somewhere in Arizona, you're wearing, a bandana on your head, you're all tan, your clothes are worn out, you're next to a big motorcycle with 2 bags in the back, and you have New York license plates, people get curious. And people would approach me and say, hey, what are you doing here? Did you ride all the way from New York? And I would say, yeah, it was a dream of mine. And every single one of these individuals responded in the exact very same way. They said, really? Well, I've always dreamt about blank. And they share their dreams with me. And I've come to realize that their dreams to me seem very attainable. But to them, they don't. Just like my dream seemed completely unattainable to me 18 months before. And I got fascinated with that barrier and how possibly it can be overcome. While I was on the road, I also, I've come to realize that I want to stop dealing with the business side of things. And I don't want to run the company anymore. I want to go back to my roots in science and in research. And I negotiated the sale of my company to 2 entrepreneurs in Los Angeles who were starting a company around the same domain at the same time. And when I reached Los Angeles, I sold my company to them. And I became their chief scientist and went back to my scientific roots. So it was one childhood plan, checked or rechecked. Then I got back home, for 3 days, hugged my family tight, and on the 4th day, we got out and we got a dog. And the dog is a great example of the difference between a plan and a dream. It was never a dream of mine. It was clearly a plan. My parents said very specifically, when you grow up, you'll get your dog. And for some reason I didn't. Then I got certified as a life coach. I started coaching and teaching in different academic programs and coaching schools. And that was another plan of mine as a child, to teach and to write. And I started writing my first book. And then my wife and I had another one of these conversations. And we decided that it's very meaningful for us to have our children grow up in the proximity of their extended family, which was in Israel. So we packed everything up and we moved back. After 12 years, my wife closed her business. We just went on a plane, put everything in a container, and moved. And a few weeks after I got back, I reunited my high school band. Well, we haven't seen each other in 25 years, so the 80s still rock, if you're wondering. So what I'd like to leave you with in conclusion for this talk is the following. They say that Rome wasn't built in a day. We know the saying. And it's true. Clearly, it wasn't. But it was built one day at a time. What I'd like to ask you today when you leave the room, when you leave this talk, and think about your own life and how you may want to change it, is to stop thinking about pursuing your dreams and instead start thinking about living your plans every day. And if you do, I promise you that you will very quickly find yourself going on the ride of your life. Thank you.